For the festival, of course, I took the opportunity to bring, since we had a bigger stage, I proposed to bringing a larger ensemble to not only play some of the music from the record, because in the record, every time we do an album, I take the freedom to be like, hey, it's an album. Why not have an extra voice? Why don't we have an extra layer? We can do those things in the studio. But I wanted to make sure to bring that same kind of or even more, like I rearranged a lot of the music that we record on the album for this specific concert.
Hey everybody, Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to another episode of Around Town. Of course, I'm doing previews for the Chicago Jazz Fest 2023 coming up August 31st to September 3rd, and I'm excited to have Juan Pastor on. He has performed many times at the Chicago Jazz Fest, a couple of times with his own group. He's got a new release that just came out in May, which we're going to talk about. But first, he's playing with his group Chinchano on the Pritztker Pavilion, September 1st, 4:15 to 5:05 p.m. Juan, thanks for jumping on for a few minutes. Congratulations on the gig, and also congratulations on the new recording. What's the name of the recording?
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. My new album is called Cachito. I actually have it right here.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, that is there. We put some records here in the wall, so it works out nice. Yeah, thanks for the time, and I'm so excited to be able to join the Chicago Jazz Festival. This is the first time that I'm gonna be at the pavilion with my band. I've been at the pavilion multiple times, but this is the first time that I get to bring my band Chinchano, right?
Well, and
We did.
I remember you played a couple of times with Chinchano in the past there, and I know you've got a couple of recordings with Chinchano out. And I think if there's a lot of people that are watching this that maybe know your name and have heard Chinchano because they've seen the advertisements and stuff, but haven't heard you guys play, why don't you talk a little bit about Chinchano and about how the whole concept came about for you to start the group? Because it's fascinating. I know you could talk about your past and all that too, because I know it all kind of folds together.
Yeah, so just so we did play the Chicago Jazz Festival in 2015. So we haven't really been in the fest with my band since then. I played the festival with other people, but it's we haven't been back in a minute, let's say. But yeah, Chinchano, as you mentioned, is my project that I've been kind of working. The music that I hear, most of the music that let's say I hear is music that has tradition of my country, Peru, where I grew up and I studied music. After moving to the States, of course, and learning about Black American music and play with some great musicians from the scene. It was kind of a necessity of putting my voice on the table. And without even trying too hard, it was naturally that some of the sounds that I was hearing were influenced by some of my roots, as well as some of the sounds that I was hearing at the time was more jazz related, blues, and all these things that were just kind of combining. And yeah, that was kind of like the idea of like, oh, I have these melodies, let me just put them down on paper. And key important element is that the musicians really bring the music to life, how they have been committed to the music and really not only bringing their expertise in jazz, but also taking the time to learning about the culture where I come from and really have a strong merge of those styles of music, right? Afro-Peruvian music with some like modern jazz.
What's Chinchano mean in Peruvian? I mean, I know it's from Peru, right? Or is it?
Yeah. So in Peru, so I'm from Lima, which is the capital, and the idea of Chinchano came when I first, put the band together, and it was really something where, hey, we need a name for your band, and I just didn't know what to say, and I remember talking to my dad and telling him about the music that I was doing with my band, and an early memory that I had is that since I grew up playing this instrument called cajon, which is an Afro-Peruvian instrument, that instrument, the culture that is behind that instrument is it's most of the big like a big part of that culture grew in the south of Lima in this area called Chincha. So it's not in Lima, it's in this area called Chincha, and clearly a person from Chincha would be called a Chinchano. I'm technically a Limeño, but the people from Chincha is Chinchano. So it was kind of since I was a kid, I remember my dad saying things were a we gotta go to Chincha, so you learn the real stuff. Almost like a good way to see it is like, for example, when you're in the States and you want to see where jazz comes from, and then people be like, oh, you got to go to New Orleans, and like that's where things kind of started. So it's a similar idea. So Chinchano came with the idea of giving tribute to the people from Chincha. It's just the idea. Many times I encounter people from Chincha and be like, hey, are you from Chincha? And I'm like, I'm actually not. I'm just giving tribute to you all. Some people liked it. Some people will be like, "Oh man, got offended." But you're not gonna please everyone. That's okay.
No, of course not. Of course not. Trust me, I know that. But it's so you started this group. You started writing all the music too, right? I mean, this is all original music that you've been writing for the group, right?
It's all original music. I wouldn't say I write all the music because one of my musicians, Stu Mindeman, who is like one of my best friends as well, he's been in Peru like 8, 9 times, let's say. He multiple times traveled to Peru to hang out or just to learn about the music. Seems to really like it, and because of that, he had a passion to write in within the Peruvian Andy style, which is called Wino. So he has a lot of songs in that kind of specific genre. Um, so we collaborate a lot. And every album he has at least bring 1 or 2 songs per album, right? Usually we have about 9 songs. I usually write the rest, and I like to have always one cover to arrange. I like to have a Peruvian folk song that I arrange as kind of something that it started as just kind of like, hey, let's do it. But now it kind of became a tradition that's like, hey, what is the cover that we're going to arrange for this album? Right.
Well, that's
So,
bad.
so it's most of my music. Yeah.
I mean, I love that fact too, because first of all, you're collaborating, and especially with this kind of music. Obviously, I've seen you perform. I've seen Chinchano perform many times, but this type of music, everybody in the band has to be locked in, like frame of mind. This isn't something where you can just say, "Oh, okay, let's just all get together and we'll just jam this thing. It'll sound great." It's not that way. So finding the right like-minded musicians to play with you, somebody like Stu, and I know you have a couple of different guys in the band that have rotated in and out, which we'll talk about in a second, but isn't it really important to find a like-minded group so that you can all kind of get on the same wavelength? Because there's so many layers to this music. You can't just wing it, as they say.
You're right. The learning curve that every single musician who has passed through my band has mentioned to me is understanding the feel, the swing of the 8 notes, the 16 notes, because as most of my friends are Americans, we're more used to like the tradition of jazz, which has like a specific way when we approach the 8 notes, right? I know we can talk about music, but it is hard to break it down in paper. It's more of a like, hey, you have to listening and like learning how to phrase in that specific way. So it's the same thing with this style. Like these musicians have to take the time to really listening and see like, oh, okay, like they are placing the 16 notes in the front or in the end. How are they doing that? And I've been lucky to have in my core members in the band is Stu, as I mentioned, Matt Eulery, who's my bassist now, and Dustin Lorenzi, who's playing tenor. So that's the core band. That's where we usually play performances as a quartet. For the festival, of course, I took the opportunity to bring, since we had a bigger stage, I proposed to bringing a larger ensemble to not only play some of the music from the record, because in the record, every time we do an album, I take the freedom to be like, hey, it's an album. Why not have an extra voice? Why don't we have an extra layer? We can do those things in the studio. But I wanted to make sure to bring that same kind of, or even more. Like I rearranged a lot of the music that we record on the album for this specific concert. The album has songs that have like 2 horns, but like it's like, hey, I have 3 horns now, so I'm gonna remake a new arrangement of the same song. And for me, as a composer and an arranger, that's super exciting. Just rethink some of the songs. How can I keep expanding? And that's been super fun in the past week just to rearrange the music.
Well,
And I can also tell you a little bit. Yeah. What are you gonna say? Sorry.
Well, real fast, I was just going to say, who's on since you're expanding out the ensemble, who can people hear on September 1st on the Pritztker Pavilion at 4:15 when they come to see you?
Yeah, of course. So we have Greg Ward and Victor Garcia from both Chicago musicians, known in Chicago. I know Greg is from Peoria, but they're Chicago musicians known in the scene. They're really top musicians, let's say. They play with everyone. And for the album, I invite them to join for a couple songs. They're like Greg's, I think, is in two songs, and Victor's in two songs. They're not even the same songs, but they're going to be joining for the whole concert. Like I mentioned, I rearranged. And I'm also bringing, I'm super excited to bring actually Jair Sala, who is a Grammy nominated percussionist. His career is got popular playing with Pedrito Martinez, who is like a very popular musician, and Jair was like his kind of like second percussionist. Like Pedrito plays percussion and singing, and Jair was playing. And I got to know Jair because of that band. Soon enough, you know, 5 years ago, I figured out I didn't know that he was actually Peruvian, that he lived in New York, but he was actually from Peru. So I started like really interested in his career, and I reached out to him. It was when I was recording my third album, El Regreso, and I invite him to do some percussion, you know, as a guest. So I recorded the percussion, but then I delete all the percussion. I was like, hey man, you should record the percussion. So I went to New York, I went to the studio, had laid all this percussion, and I always had this idea like, man, I gotta get you to Chicago to play a live show with me because you're just so happening. It was fun to work with him, not only because he understands the tradition of Peruvian music really well, but he's also some of the highest level of conga cajon playing that I've heard. Period. So I, as a percussionist, as a cajon player as well, I get really picky with when I have to put another cajon player on the stage. So it was for me. It's always been like kind of like it's not that they're not great musicians in town. It's just like it's more about like people who are really understand the style of Peruvian music. So when I got the call for the festival, I just like the budget definitely helps. It's like, hey, let's bring Jair. This is the opportunity to bring Jair, and we have some Zoom conversation. We've been talking through the music. We have a main rehearsal coming up next week, so it's gonna be super fun having him on the stage with us.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
we're seven people on stage, so it's gonna be great.
That's first of all, going to see you guys play just as a quartet's always exciting. But as you expand this out and then you're bringing him in from New York, I mean, that's so September 1st, J. Pritztker Pavilion, 4:15 p.m. to 5:05 p.m. Now you have the new recording out, Cachito, that came out in May. I'm assuming you're going to play some tunes from that, right? So that's going to be rearranged a little bit. So talk a little bit about the meaning behind this recording too, because I know there's a deeper meaning behind it.
Of course. So Cachito is my record. It's this one right here. That's actually, let me just grab it really quick.
All right.
This is actually, it's a painting of a picture that was taken in the 80s. This is actually my dad.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yes, I know. It's pretty awesome. I can show you the picture later. I have the original. It's like this size. So I hired this painter from Cusco, another town in Peru, to do a painting of the big photo, right? So we can take a high resolution picture to use it. Now, why did I did that? Because unfortunately, my father passed away in July. 2 years have passed since he passed, and of course, he was the inspiration for me to do not only music, but just like how my father figure and many things, how I put my life, and my album was this idea of a tribute to him. I was already working on the album when I knew he was sick, so there was a process of knowing that he had cancer. It was kind of like hard. You want to be positive about it, but it was kind of hard to see how he was like the progress of the illness. Right. It was not necessarily getting better. So this definitely took influence on how I was doing the writing. I even remember having a big concert. I played a High Park Jazz Festival, and I already knew that he had cancer, and it was like stage 4. So at that time, I started like thinking about some of the music that I was writing, and it was, even if you hear, there are moments of the music that they can sound dark, like they sound like a little uncomfortable, let's say, because of how I was feeling. And there are also moments that you'll hear that sound more of I would use words like as peaceful moments, as like something like goes into eternal life. So some of those feelings that I was going through the time were part of how I was developing the music at the same time, right? And yes, the album is I think there's 7 songs. Yeah, 8 songs. 8 songs. keep forgetting. There are 8 songs from those. We're gonna play, I think, 5 in the festival that I rearranged. So even if you have the album, these are gonna be new versions of all the songs because why not rearrange everything? And it's a lot of work. It's fun.
Yeah.
And I wrote a couple new stuff for the festival that are gonna be. We played in a gig, but never played in this configuration. So everything is kind of world premiere now because these arrangements are gonna be first time heard. So I'm super excited for that. The album was released in late May, so May 29. So it still feels very fresh. I've been dropping videos of the recording session, trying to drop one video a month. So if anybody's interested in getting a little previews, you can find me on social media. They can find my website. I've been uploading everything on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram channel, and everything is linked also on my website. I know you're going to be able to put it somewhere in here, like right here or something. Right?
That's my job. You're doing my job, Juan. Link up right there.
Hey, man, I'm trying to.
So it's juan-pastor.com, but of course it is linked up to Juan's point right down there. And you can see the whole group perform this incredible show. I'm so glad they put you guys on the main stage. So September 1st, Pritztker Pavilion, 4:15 p.m. to 5:05 p.m. Juan Pastor, Chinchano, his larger ensemble, which is going to be very exciting. Of course, for those of you that are heading down to the fest, I would suggest getting there early. All the music actually starts at 11:30 on that Friday on September 1st. So come down, spend the entire day. And Juan's kicking off the main stage performances that night, 4:15 p.m. he starts. And man, congratulations on everything. This is going to be.
Thank you again, Mike. I will tell you one thing.
Yeah.
I will bring records more than last time I was there, because I remember in 2015 you asked me to bring some records to sell at the you had a stand there with the Chicago Jazz magazine. Before I knew, we ran out of records. You sold out. I was like, you got my records. I was like, I only brought 50. So this time I'm coming prepared.
Good. Yeah.
So
good.
yeah, we're gonna have all our records, CDs. We're gonna have vinyls, all the good stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know where they have the main stage set up because I don't do the sales anymore, and I don't think anybody is. So I think they have separate main stage stuff set up. But to Juan's point,
Didn't know that.
He played at one of the side stages. Time he came over, he had a line down in front of my place, and he sold everything out. It was like, okay, well, there you go. So he's coming prepared this time, and you want to pick this up too because I keep telling everybody, and Juan, I've had a lot of different musicians on talking about the same thing, especially something like this and a recording like yours. You want to listen from top to bottom on something like this because there's a deep meaning behind it, and you put it together in that order for a specific reason. And that's why you want to not just single here and there. You want to pick the whole thing up. And I'm pretty sure if Juan's there, he might even sign it for you. I bet he will.
Yeah, I haven't get used to the idea of just releasing singles yet. There's something that it's fun, but it's nothing like the experience of putting a record and just listening top to bottom the way the artist intended of you to go through like that. Of course, everybody is gonna have their own kind of perception and kind of like trip while they're listening to the record. But there's like a curve, like the way like, hey, this is how it's set. Even if you hear the first track, I feel like a lot of people are like, wow, man, like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, because I really expose myself in a way of emotions, right? Like there's nothing to be hidden in this record. It's like right from the beginning, you'll hear what the record is about. And when it finishes also, it kind of gives you that sense of closure, right?
Well, I'm glad you explained the whole thing too. And I know you're going to talk a little bit about it when you're performing this stuff up on the main stage. So again, September 1st, 4:15 p.m., Pritztker Pavilion, Chicago Jazz Fest 2023. Juan, thanks for jumping on today. Congratulations on everything, and I will see you at the festival for sure.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for the time, and I'm excited to be in the festival, and I look forward to see you next time.
Absolutely. And of course, thanks to everybody for watching. As I always say, all the information, including the entire Chicago Jazz Fest lineup, is up on chicagojazz.com. And until next time, hopefully I will see somebody out on the scene.